Welcome to the Explainer. You see gold and Bitcoin prices going through the roof, and the first question that probably pops into your head is this it? Is the US dollar finally collapsing? Well, what if I told you that's not the whole story? What if something a lot more mathematical is going on behind the scenes? Let's get into it. So to really get a feel for what's at stake, let's just paint a picture. Let's fast forward a bit. Imagine this. The date is April 16th, 2026, and we're 47 days into a hot war between the United States and Iran. In response to a U.S. strike, Iran makes a huge move. They blockade the Strait of Hormuz. And that number, 25%, that's not just some statistic. That is a quarter of the entire world's oil supply just stopped. The global economy runs on that oil. It is a massive choke point. And of course, the U.S. doesn't just sit back. They hit back, and they hit back hard. They slap a counter-blockade on Iranian ports, the U.S. Navy is out there halting all ships, and they've already intercepted 10 civilian vessels. It's an absolute classic power play on the high seas.
So with all this chaos, this powder keg just about to explode, what do the markets do? Well, they panic. People flee to safety. And gold? It just skyrockets to an unbelievable $4,800 an ounce.
Now, when you see a number like that, what's the first thing you think? It's probably this, right? This has to be the end of the line for the US dollar. The writing's on the wall. Its time as the world's top dog is finally over. But hold on, it's actually a lot more complicated than that. You know, the famous investor Ray Dalio has this great way of putting it. He says real global power, or hegemony, isn't just about the money. It's a three-legged stool. You need the reserve currency, sure, but you also need the military might to back it up, and you need to control the payment network. So what Iran is doing here, it's not just a military move. They're taking a swing at one of the physical pillars holding up the entire dollar system.
You know, this whole situation, it feels familiar, doesn't it? It's like we've seen this movie before. And that's because there's a pretty well-worn historical path for how empires and their currencies start to fall apart. Let's take a look. So when we're talking about fiat currency, money that's only backed by a government's promise, there's this classic five-stage life cycle of collapse. First, the government racks up a mountain of debt. Then, people start to lose faith in the money. That leads to stage 3, Gresham's Law. Basically, people hoard the good money and spend the bad stuff. Soon, the government can't even collect enough taxes to function. And the final stage? A mad dash back to hard assets, things with real, tangible value. And history gives us two perfect but very different examples of this. Take the Roman Empire. For them, it was a slow burn, a 250-year-long death spiral as they kept putting less and less silver in their coins. But then you look at the Song and Yuan dynasties in China. They invented paper money, and then they invented hyperinflation. They just printed it into oblivion, and their economy imploded before the enemy even kicked in the door. Two paths to the same destination. So the big question is, which one are we? A slow Roman decline or a fast Chinese collapse? But what if that's the wrong question entirely? What if what we're seeing isn't a collapse at all? What if it's just math? A simple, cold, hard reevaluation? Okay, before we go any further, let's get our definitions straight, because this is super important. On one side, you have hard currency. Think gold, think Bitcoin, stuff that has a limited, fixed supply. You can't just make more of it. On the other side, you have fiat currency. That's your US dollar. It's backed by the government, and they can, in theory, print as much of it as they want. And the way these two things interact is actually pretty simple. You can think of it like a basic formula. The price of something hard, like gold, is basically its scarcity, divided by the number of dollars floating around. Simple as that. And this is the absolute key to understanding everything. Think about our little equation. The top number, the amount of gold or Bitcoin, barely budges. It grows at a tiny, predictable 1.5% a year. But the bottom number, the supply of US dollars, it exploded by 40% in just 2 years. The scale is just completely out of whack. And that right there, that's the central idea here. It's not that gold got stronger or Bitcoin suddenly became magical. No, it's that the measuring stick we use to price them, the dollar, was stretched. All that new money had to go somewhere, and it's showing up in the price of assets that have a fixed supply. So it's not a dollar collapse, it's a reevaluation. It really is just math.
But okay, that leads to a really interesting paradox, right? If the dollar's value is getting watered down so much, why is it still the king? Why hasn't something else come along and taken the crown?
Well, to figure that out, you have to look at the contenders. I mean, what are the real alternatives out there today? Who could actually step up and take the dollar's place? Let's be honest. When you really lay it all out, the picture gets pretty stark. You've got the Chinese yuan, but good luck getting your money out of China. Their capital markets are a closed system. Then there's the euro. It's a solid currency for sure, but it's a currency without a country, really. No single treasury, no single army to back it. And what about Bitcoin? It's got the math on its side, but it's just not ready for prime time to settle trillions in global trade. Not yet anyway. So who wins? The dollar. It's still the top dog, almost by default.
Going back to Ray Dalio's big cycle idea, he'd say the dollar is definitely in the late autumn of its empire. You see all the signs, huge debts, printing tons of money. But that final step, where a new power takes over, it's stuck in a holding pattern. Why? Because there's simply no one ready to take the throne.
Okay, so if this is the new reality, what does it mean for us? For you, how do you navigate this landscape and protect what you've earned?
This is the part that can feel a little bit like a brain teaser. You have to accept two ideas that seem to completely contradict each other. Truth number one, the dollar is going to stay the world's main currency for a while. There's just no alternative. Truth number two, the value of every single one of those dollars, what it can actually buy, is going to keep going down over the long haul. Both things are happening at the same time. And if you're a betting person, the odds are overwhelmingly, like 95%, that this weird state of affairs just keeps going. The chance of a full-blown, catastrophic dollar collapse, it's a tiny risk. The real risk, the one that affects everyone, is the slow, silent killer. Your money just buying less and less, year after year.
So let's just nail down the key takeaways here. First, what you're seeing in the prices of gold and Bitcoin isn't a collapse. It's a reevaluation based on simple math. Second, there are no real challengers to the dollar's throne yet. That creates this bizarre paradox, where the king is still king, but he's getting poorer every day. And finally, that's exactly why hard assets like gold and Bitcoin are so important right now. They're acting as a hedge, a financial lifeboat, against this steady decline in purchasing power.
And all of this brings us to one final, very personal question. This isn't just theory for economists to argue about. If a dollar that buys less and less over time is the new normal, then that forces every single one of us to ask a really important question. How are you going to protect the value of your assets? Something to think about. Thanks so much for tuning in.